So, what is HIIT and why is HIIT more than just a fad? So let's start with what is HIIT. HIIT stands for High Intensity Interval Training. And the claims are, okay, if we were to do a comparative 30-minute workout, so one being in your fat burning zone, so approximately 60% of your max heart rate, that could be some weight training, could be a light jog or a brisk walk, compared to a 30-minute high intensity workout, so intervals, short rest durations, about 80% of your max heart rate and up. They say that while both workouts will burn about 300 calories in that initial session, the afterburn effect will be up to 500 calories for the HIIT workout and only about 150 for the lower intensity exercise. Now, why is this? So let's start with the low intensity exercise. Now that's fairly easy because when we're at 60% of our heart rate zone, we're working in an aerobic zone. So that means that we have enough oxygen to supply the demands of our activity. Okay, so we have enough oxygen coming in to continue with that work. So if we're going to be walking around the mall, for example, you could walk for hours on end, okay, and all you need to really refuel with is maybe some water after a few hours and some food. Okay, now when we're going into high intensity interval training and we're getting to that 80% or higher, okay, we're looking at then an anaerobic energy zone. So what that means is we now have an absence of oxygen, okay, and we can only maintain less amount of work at a certain rate, so our rate actually diminishes, and this creates an oxygen debt. Debt, you say. So what is it that we're talking about when we talk about oxygen debt? So let's take the simplistic example of our weight training. Now, we already said that we're in an aerobic zone. That means we have enough oxygen to meet the demands of our body, okay, whether that's in a brisk walk or the weight training. Okay, so the oxygen debt is not going to be very high because we have enough coming in and the intensity of our workout isn't requiring any more. Now let's consider this with our high interval HIIT training, so high intensity interval training. So with our HIIT training, what we're wanting to do is reduce the amount of rest that we have, okay, so that our relative recovery, okay, is not the same. We're not actually getting that recovery that we need to get back to normal resting levels. Okay, that means it's going to have a diminishing effect. That's why the workouts are a lot shorter and a lot more intense, because we're in that 80% plus, our anaerobic zones. Okay, now we can compare the results of these through the EPOC. This is EPOC standing for excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. Okay, now with our lower intensity exercise, while it might still be there, chances are that it's not going to be very much. Okay, however, with a high intensity exercise, we have elevated resting metabolic rate from that oxygen debt. So the time that it's taking for our body to recover, it's actually working harder through the metabolic rate to get back to a normal resting zone. So over the next 12 hours or 24 hours, you'll have a higher calorific burn than you would for that same 30 minutes in a HIIT exercise than you would on a low intensity exercise. So how do you ensure that you're actually working out in HIIT? Okay, now obviously I've mentioned heart rate zones here, okay, so we can take a look at being in your anaerobic zone as approximately 80% of your max heart rate, okay, while your fat burning zone and your aerobic zone about 60%, okay. Now when we consider these percentages, everybody's max heart rate will be different, but we all work within these same sort of zones, and they're identified through the absence of oxygen or presence of oxygen, or your CP, which is a chemical process right at the top, your 90% plus. Now, what we're actually hoping to do here is when we do HIIT training is be in that anaerobic zone, so about 80% plus. So you can use a heart rate monitor to do this. You can also use the torque test to do this if you didn't have a heart rate zone monitor. So if you're in your 60%, you can probably do your reps or your light jog or your brisk walk and have a fluid conversation with your friends. However, if you're in HIIT, you're doing your exercise, your interval training, and you can have a conversation. Talking takes oxygen. So if you've got enough oxygen to talk, you're probably not putting enough oxygen and energy into your exercise. So is HIIT for everybody? Now, HIIT as a format of training can be for anybody, but like everything, whether it's rock climbing or whether it's doing a deadlift or whether it's getting in a boxing ring, okay, it all requires a certain amount of skill and foundation before you do that. So now, not all HIIT has to be the sort of stereotypical plyometrics where everybody's jumping all the time. Remember, we said we're getting into a heart rate zone, so we want to be about 80% plus. And now with our intervals, we can shorten the workout by reducing the amount of rest and keeping the work intervals at a higher intensity. And now this is going to have the same effect. So whether you're doing your HIIT workout 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and you're doing squat jumps into plyo lunges into skaters, which would be a more advanced HIIT workout for people who have good strong joints and muscles. You could also do the same HIIT workout with a lower impact, and you could do it on a bike. Okay, so we could be into sprints for 20 seconds on and then 10 seconds off. Okay, or into hill climbs. Again, the way that you're looking to do that is looking through your heart rate zones and ensuring that we're getting to that anaerobic. So we're creating that post excess oxygen consumption debt. So why is HIIT more than just a fad? Well, it's obvious. It's high energy. We love high energy. Okay, it's a great way to work out with friends in a class environment. Okay, we're getting more calorific burn over 24 hours than we are with a similar lower intensity exercise. Okay, so what's not to love? And obviously this is a training format, this is a heart rate zone, so it's always going to be around. So whether you like it or you hate it, it's here to stay.